result of being around that man, Sean Puffy Combs. I don't sleep to this day. I have a problem sleeping to this day. Like, yo, man, I'm here to work, man. I ain't sang in a week. I mean, I'm 13 years old, and I'm telling him, look, you're gonna put me in the studio, man. You got Biggie Smalls in there, you got Craig Mack in there. I'm not here to party with you. I don't want to go to the clubs. Matter of fact, I'm too young to even be in here. Why you got me in clubs? We would fight, we would tussle.
Kick in the door, waving the 4-4. All you heard was Papa, don't hit me no more. Let's go. Kick in the door, waving the 4-4. Hey, hey, hey.
Puff and Usher did have a situation. And that situation led Usher to the hospital. Now I let Usher explain that to y'all. And he said, yo, would you send your son to Diddy camp? And Usher said, no. Ask him why he won't send him to Diddy camp.
All right, let's get into it because 50 Cent just lit a match and dropped it straight into Diddy's legacy. For years, Diddy liked to position himself as the ultimate mentor, the man who took raw talent and turned it into superstardom. And in the case of Usher, that was the image he sold to the public. A young, wide-eyed teenager trying to break into the music industry was handed over to Diddy's care like some kind of rite of passage. But behind the scenes, according to 50 Cent, it was a completely different story. And once you hear the details, that whole Big Brother image starts to fall apart real fast. See, Diddy didn't just mentor Usher. He introduced him to a world most teenagers have no business being in. Wild parties, strange environments, grown men with power and money circling like vultures.
Parties are the hottest ticket around.
They won't even give me a permit for the parties, man. They don't want me to throw the parties no more. But we ain't gonna stop. We gonna keep on having fun, bringing people together from all walks of life. You gonna hear about my parties. They're gonna be shutting them down. They're gonna probably be arresting me, doing all types of crazy things just because we wanna have a good time. You know, whenever you bring up a different element into people's environment, things that broaden people's horizons, people get intimidated. There's a lot of people out there that feel intimidated by it. And it ain't nothing but break it down racial barriers, break it down generation barriers. People from all walks of life. Ron Perlman talking to Jay-Z, Jay-Z talking to, you know what I'm saying? It just goes on and on, you know, it's just like people from all walks of life connecting and getting together.
Dying to get into your party. How does that make you feel?
It doesn't make me feel any way special, it doesn't make me feel like a bigger person, it just makes me feel like I know how to throw a party.
What started off as guidance quickly turned into exposure. Exposure to things no kid should ever be around. And 50? He's not holding anything back. In fact, he's been dropping hints for years, but now he's saying it loud and clear. Diddy allegedly gave Usher to other industry men while hiding behind the label of mentorship. And what's worse, Usher made it. He became the star they wanted, but that success came with scars and silence. He never really spoke about what went down, but 50? He's calling it out for what it was, a setup. A carefully orchestrated web where Diddy wasn't just a bystander, he was the gatekeeper. And now that the truth is starting to come out, it's not just Usher people are looking at, it's everyone Diddy ever brought into his circle. So if you thought this was just another industry rumor, think again. This is about power, control, and a young Usher being thrown into something he never signed up for. Let's get into what 50 Cent just revealed and why it's sending shockwaves across the industry. Before Diddy ever became linked to Justin Bieber, he had already played a major role in the early career of another young star, Usher Raymond. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Usher was seen as one of the brightest rising talents in R&B, and it was during this period that Diddy stepped into his life, presenting himself as a mentor and guide. Usher was just a teenager when he entered the music industry, and Diddy, already an established figure in the hip-hop and R&B scenes, took him under his wing. At the time, it seemed like a dream opportunity. Diddy had influence, connections, and a track record of creating stars. To the outside world, this relationship looked like a powerful music executive helping a talented young artist find his voice and his place in the industry. Diddy didn't just help with Usher's music. He opened the door to a lifestyle most teens could never imagine. He introduced Usher to the entertainment world's inner circles, its culture, and its chaos. For a young artist trying to find his footing, Diddy's mentorship came with access to high-profile events, exposure to luxury, and the kind of industry experience that could never be taught in a classroom. But it didn't stop there. Diddy also reportedly brought Usher into his personal life in ways that many now look back on with raised eyebrows. And 50 50 knows all of this because while he never attended Puffy parties, he knew what the industry entailed and he knew what was going on. According to resurfaced clips and stories that have re-entered public conversations over the last year, Diddy wasn't just managing Usher's music career, he was bringing him into adult environments that many now say were inappropriate for someone so young. Usher once revealed that he'd stayed at Diddy's house as a teen, and that time under Diddy's roof came with parties, older women, and a kind of freedom that most teens aren't used to.
I moved to New York City, and I lived with Sean Puffy Combs for a year.
That's the crazy thing. Now, that was L.A. Reid's idea, right? We're sending you
New
over
York
to
City.
something called Puffy Flavor Camp.
There you go.
To learn
Flavor Camp.
Yeah,
Flavor
that's what it
Camp.
was called. And you're going to go to Puff Daddy's. He's going
In
to
the 90s, do you understand what that's like?
Puffy's place was like just filled with chicks and like nonstop, right?
No, not really. I
Come
mean,
on.
but hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you
I
seeing?
went there to see the lifestyle,
Right.
And I saw it, and it was, but I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. It was pretty wild. It was,
So
it was
nobody
crazy.
tried to, some woman didn't come along.
I didn't
and-
say that.
Okay.
I didn't
But
say
you
that. What I did say is that there were very curious things taking place, and I didn't necessarily understand it.
Biggie Smalls was there.
Biggie Smalls was there, Lil' Kim, Craig Mack.
All these people
all
are
of
hanging
these-
around.
Yeah, man. Faith Evans,
your parents
Jodeci,
were
Mary J.
okay?
Blige. They didn't know nothing about this. I was having a good time. You know what I mean?
Does he have you doing any chores? Are you doing dishes at all? I mean, to keep you humble somewhat? Or are you just like, can you stay up till 4 a.m. with them and party?
I mean, I could. I actually stayed up longer than them.
And do you have money? What's going on?
I mean, I had like per diem.
Yeah.
I had like,
What
like
a
a living.
life.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
14 years old. You're a dad now. Would you ever send your kid to Puffy camp?
Hell no.
At the time, the music world didn't ask many questions. People were dazzled by the success Usher was beginning to achieve, and Diddy was celebrated for helping shape him into a superstar. But in hindsight, many are beginning to question the dynamics of that mentorship. What kind of mentorship exposes a minor to adult situations under the guise of guidance? What was really happening behind the scenes when a teenage Usher was being brought around elite parties and powerful men? The truth is, the line between mentorship and manipulation has started to blur. As more people speak up and reflect on Diddy's relationships with young male artists, Usher's name continues to come up. While Usher himself has not accused Diddy of anything criminal, the public is beginning to revisit the circumstances around their connection, and 50 is not going to keep it hidden anymore. Diddy wasn't just a mentor in the studio. He was a figure who influenced Usher's image, lifestyle, and social circles during a highly impressionable time in his life. And now, as investigations into Diddy's behavior continue, the public is asking whether the mentorship that helped launch Usher's career might have also placed him in environments no teenager should have been exposed to. At just 13 years old, Usher moved to New York and lived with Diddy for nearly a year. The arrangement was set up by L.A. Reid, who believed Diddy could help shape Usher into the artist he was meant to be. It was framed as a learning opportunity, a way to experience the music industry up close. But Usher has admitted that what he saw and experienced during that time was overwhelming for someone his age. In interviews over the years, Usher has described that period as confusing. He called it curious and admitted he witnessed things he didn't fully understand. It wasn't just about music and performance. He was exposed to a fast-paced adult environment where he felt out of place. He was too young to grasp everything that was happening, but old enough to know it wasn't normal for a teenager. Usher once reflected on that time and said that while it was meant to be artist development, what he really experienced was something far different. He has never accused Diddy of wrongdoing, but his words suggest that the environment was not one designed with a young person's well-being in mind. Even years later, when asked if he would ever send his own son to the same kind of program, he answered clearly, absolutely not. Usher's rise to stardom has long been celebrated as one of the greatest success stories in R&B, but over the years, that polished image has been slowly chipped away, not by Usher himself, but by people from within the music industry who claim they saw a very different story unfolding behind the scenes. According to multiple insiders, including outspoken artist Jaguar Wright, the mentorship that Diddy offered Usher was anything but genuine. In fact, many now believe it was exploitative from the start, and 50 is glad other people are also talking about it now.
He been sucking on Diddy's dick a long time. It's time for him to learn how to make this thing happen without the devil's dick in his mouth or ass.
You don't think if he sued, he'll just Lil Woody the situation, and I don't recall? I don't recall.
No, because I think if a victim comes out against Usher, it'll show how egregious this shit is. Because if he can be a predator, then anybody can be a predator.
Can't smile in your face the whole time.
You feel what I'm saying? Like, people look at Usher, they don't see that. They not seeing the victim. They not seeing that boy that got rushed to the hospital. They're not seeing what the intentions was in his heart when he took Justin Bieber there.
Jaguar Wright has been one of the loudest voices calling attention to what she says really happened to Usher during his time with Diddy. In multiple interviews, she's claimed that Diddy didn't just mentor Usher, he manipulated him. She says Diddy used his influence and power to put Usher in situations that were never appropriate for someone his age. Worse, Jaguar alleges that Diddy sent Usher to be around other men in the industry, implying that these encounters weren't about music at all, but rather about control and influence. She painted a disturbing picture of a teenage Usher, isolated from his family, trying to make it in a cutthroat business, and being told that this was the price he had to pay for success. According to her, Diddy led him to believe that playing along with certain powerful figures was just part of the game. That if Usher wanted the fame, the opportunities, the record deals, he needed to follow the rules of the people who ran the industry. And that included Diddy himself. Jaguar didn't stop there. She said Usher wasn't the only young male artist caught in this web, but he was one of the earliest and most high-profile examples. And because he became so successful, the industry turned a blind eye. People saw him on magazine covers, winning awards, topping the charts, and assumed everything must have been fine. But the truth, according to Jaguar and others, was far more painful. She described men leaving Diddy's house in a state of shock, sometimes running out, overwhelmed by whatever they had been exposed to. And yet, amid that chaos, Usher stayed. Why? Because he was made to believe this was part of his training, that this was how superstars were built. He didn't have the luxury of saying no, not when the man mentoring him had the keys to the industry. Jaguar's claims have sparked wider conversations. Over time, more people have begun to question what really went on during those so-called mentorships and artist development programs. People who were once silent are starting to speak. They're pointing out that Usher's vague comments over the years, saying he saw curious things and wouldn't send his own son into the same environment, may have been hints toward a larger, more disturbing truth. And it's not just Jaguar Wright sounding the alarm. Other insiders and former industry professionals have come forward, echoing similar concerns. They've said that Usher, as a young teen, was being shaped not just musically but psychologically, pressured into environments where he was vulnerable, where power dynamics were one-sided, and where his silence was expected. There's something deeply heartbreaking about this. Usher was a kid with a voice, a dream, and an opportunity. But instead of being protected, many now believe he was exploited. Instead of being nurtured, he was exposed. And instead of being guided with care, he was allegedly pushed into a version of the industry that no child should ever be a part of. And even more tragic, after everything he went through, Usher would go on to introduce another young boy, Justin Bieber, to that very same world. A world he once admitted he would never send his own son into.
There's a famous clip of Puffy that's resurfaced with a very young Justin Bieber saying, "I've got custody of Justin for 48 hours, and what we're going to do, we cannot divulge." I mean, these guys tell you who they are. Mm-hmm. They may do it with like a wink and a nod, but they're telling you, this is a bad, dangerous guy, and I knew he wasn't going to get bail.
So when people look back at Usher's career now, they're starting to ask different questions. Not about how he got famous, but about what it cost him, and about how many people knew what was happening and chose to stay quiet. Now, Jaguar Wright has come forward with new and deeply troubling claims, not just about Diddy, but about Usher as well. According to her, Usher wasn't just another young artist caught up in Diddy's world. She alleges that Usher may have knowingly played a role in bringing others into the same environment he had once experienced himself. Specifically, Jaguar claims that Usher was fully aware of Diddy's intentions, particularly when it came to Justin Bieber. She says that despite having first-hand knowledge of how damaging and unsafe that world could be, Usher still helped introduce Bieber to Diddy's circle. If true, this suggests a much more active role than previously thought, not just as a former victim of the system, but as someone who may have helped feed it. These allegations have sparked serious outrage and concern concern. The idea that someone who once spoke about seeing curious things and not understanding what he was looking at could later turn around and allow another teenager to walk into the same situation has left many questioning Usher's decisions and his responsibility. People are now asking, if Usher truly knew what was happening, why would he bring Bieber into it? Was it pressure from the industry, fear of retaliation, or something else? Jaguar's statements have added a new layer to an already disturbing controversy. Her words suggest that this wasn't just a case of one powerful figure taking advantage of young talent. It may have been part of a broader pattern of silence, complicity, and enabling, where even those who had been harmed felt forced to keep the cycle going. As the conversation continues, many are calling for a deeper investigation, especially rappers like 50 Cent, not only into Diddy's actions, but into the roles that others may have played in protecting him or helping him gain access to more young artists. Usher, once seen as simply another young star caught in a toxic system, is now facing serious scrutiny. Whether these claims will be legally pursued remains to be seen, but in the court of public opinion, the pressure is growing. If there's one thing the situation is making clear, it's that the music industry has a long history of looking the other way. And now, more than ever, people are demanding accountability from everyone involved, including those who stood by, stayed silent, or, as Jaguar Wright alleges, helped continue the cycle. It's not just Jaguar Wright who's been sounding the alarm. Several other insiders have come forward over the years to shed light on what really happened to Usher during his time with Diddy, including someone who was there to witness it up close, Gene Deal.
I don't F with that dude. And at the time, I didn't even know who the F Usher was. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those type of situations. And when somebody say, yo, man, I don't F with the getting out that industry and everything like that. You know, Puff sent this little kid to the hospital. How he sent him to the hospital? Man, bleeding from the butt. And that's what was said. But I didn't even have a name for the kid at the time. Then you heard it, and that's what happened.
Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, has become one of the most outspoken figures when it comes to revealing what went on behind closed doors during Diddy's prime in the industry. Unlike those who only heard stories or saw things from a distance, Gene was there. He worked security for Diddy for years. He moved through the same rooms, stood by the same doors, and saw firsthand how young artists, like Usher, were treated.
I'm not afraid to say what I saw or what I didn't see. A lot of people want to make up shit. I don't make up things. When I say Puff go in the room with two girls, you understand, and another guy and a rapper, and then all of a sudden they cousin try to go in the room, I throw them up against the piano, they run out the room with grabbing towels and they naked. They still had two girls in the room. But people want to make up a lot of and say what they want to say and flip it the way they want to flip it. I tell it like it is. But you got these guys, you got these people out here, man, you know what I'm saying? You know, all entertainment, man. Some people want the truth, some people speak the truth. Some people don't even know the truth, it'll smack them dead in the face, brother. But I tell you one thing, it's from my mouth to God's ear. And all these clowns can say whatever they want to say. Like I'm just saying, he lived a rock and roll lifestyle when I was with him, bro. I don't know about his addiction and stuff like that. He was a totally different person, bro. When I try to tell people that, they don't understand that. He was probably doing some of the little doing some things and stuff like that.
Gene has gone on record in multiple interviews talking about what he personally saw Usher go through while staying with Diddy as a teenager. He's been clear that he witnessed things no child should have been exposed to. According to Gene, he was present during moments when things would happen around Usher that he couldn't stop, even if he wanted to. And the pain of carrying that knowledge years later is something Gene has spoken about openly.
When Usher got on Shay Shay, and I don't mean to mention other people's platforms, but he got on Shay Shay and he mentioned how great and how good Puff taught him and everything. You know what I'm saying? About the business, right? I know, and people know, that was around that in that time that Puff and Usher did have a situation. And that situation led Usher to the hospital. Now I let Usher explain that to y'all. I let Usher tell that story. But how dare you say a man that groomed you, you gonna give him a pass? Bruh, you know I know. Let me reframe you on something. Remember Usher? We was at the Swiss Hotel. Puff had Kim in the room. Had one of Keith Sweat's baby mothers in the big room outside the master bedroom. He came outside in his robe. She gave him a fellatio right there. His back was turned to me. She gave him a fellatio. You knocked on the door. I came and opened the door for you. Puff went in the room. You came in the room and kissed that girl dead in her mouth. Now I'm telling that because you taking up for somebody that you know and a lot of more people know didn't do you right.
He shared that Usher wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was placed in those situations deliberately. And as Diddy's bodyguard, Gene says he was ordered to stand down, to keep things secure, but not to interfere. It wasn't his job to ask questions. But now, years later, he's no longer willing to stay quiet. In fact, Gene's honesty has inspired others to speak out too. More and more people who were once part of that inner circle are beginning to reflect on what they saw. And while some, like Usher, have remained vague or careful with their words, others are done protecting reputations. Gene's perspective is especially powerful because it comes from someone who didn't just hear the rumors, he saw the reality. He was one of the few adults in those rooms who now admits that Usher was exposed to situations no teenager should have ever been placed in. And even though Gene may not have had the power to stop it back then, he's using his voice now to make sure the truth isn't buried. As these testimonies pile up, it becomes harder to write all this off as hearsay or internet speculation. When people like Gene Deal, who were on Diddy's payroll and had direct access to his life, start sharing what they witnessed, the picture becomes clearer. And for Usher, that picture is far more complicated than the public ever realized. What started as a story about a young star being mentored has now turned into something much darker, something that demands answers. And with every new voice stepping forward, the pressure for accountability only grows stronger. In one of the most emotionally charged interviews to date, Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, reveals disturbing claims that have shaken many people, especially those who've followed Usher's career from the beginning. According to Gene, the relationship between Diddy and Usher wasn't just inappropriate, it was harmful, and it left lasting scars. Gene alleges that Diddy personally told him he had an inappropriate relationship with Usher. It's a claim that would be hard to even process on its own, but then came the lawsuit. While the legal documents don't name Usher directly, they describe a figure who performed at the Super Bowl halftime show, someone whose identity becomes painfully obvious. All signs point to Usher, and those familiar with the situation aren't dancing around it anymore. Gene didn't just hear about these events secondhand. He says he lived through them. He was in the room, literally, during many of the encounters and situations that Usher, as a young teen, was placed into. And the pain in his voice as he talks about it is hard to ignore. What really struck Gene was how, years later, Usher would go on to praise Diddy publicly, saying in an interview that Diddy taught him everything he knew about the music business. That didn't sit right with Gene. In fact, it shocked him, because Gene says he remembers it all, the chaos, the parties, the moments that no young person should ever be a part of. And he remembers Usher being hospitalized as a result of what happened to him while staying at Diddy's house. Yes, hospitalized. Gene didn't give details about the incident itself, but he says it was serious enough to land Usher in a medical facility in Scarsdale, New York. And that, he says, is something only Usher or maybe his mother should explain in full when they're ready. But the damage, according to Gene, was real. He also recalled a disturbing incident that he says took place at the Swiss Hotel, involving Diddy, Usher, and several others. Without getting graphic, Gene described a moment when Usher walked into a scene that should have never involved a teenager. Gene said he remembered opening the door for Usher, only for the young star to step into a setting where adult behavior was unfolding right in front of him and then go along with it. it, not because he fully understood what was happening, but because he was in an environment where those actions were treated as normal, expected, even encouraged. To Gene, that wasn't mentorship. That was grooming. And it broke his heart to see Usher later speak about Diddy in such glowing terms when he knew firsthand what that mentorship really looked like. "How dare you say to a man that groomed you you're going to give him a pass?" Gene asked, his voice heavy with frustration. "You praise him, but you won't send your own son to Diddy camp." That last line hit hard, because Usher has, in fact, said on national television that he would never send his own child into the same environment he was once placed in. When asked during a daytime talk show whether he'd ever send his son to Diddy's flavor camp, Usher didn't hesitate. He said, absolutely not. But as Gene pointed out, he never really explained why. And that silence, paired with public praise, is what so many people now find troubling.
Y'all put it together.
And what you mean by Diddy count?
Remember? He was on one of the talk shows. The white guy with the curly hair. What's his name? The white guy with the curly hair. And he said, "Yo, would you send your son to Diddy camp?" And Usher said, no. Ask him why he won't send him to Diddy camp. But yet and still you praise him.
Damn, man, and you said that, I know you can't go into detail, but you said that it was a situation where Diddy sent him to the hospital?
Let Usher explain that to you. Let Usher mama explain that to you. And the hospital was in Scarsdale, New York.
Gene's testimony is powerful not because it's dramatic, but because it comes from someone who saw what went on behind the curtain. He wasn't a bystander on the outside. He was inside the house, inside the hotel, inside the world where teenage Usher was told this was just how the business worked. And now that Diddy is facing multiple lawsuits, criminal charges, and public scrutiny, Gene says the truth is finally starting to catch up. He's urging people to pay attention not just to what's being said, but to what's been ignored for decades. The stories about Usher aren't new. The pain isn't new. But the willingness to talk about it, that is new. What Gene Deal wants people to understand is simple. Usher didn't just survive a rough industry, he was hurt by it. And if those in power continue to protect each other, stay silent, or rewrite history, more young artists will end up walking the same dangerous path. According to several sources and individuals who were once part of Diddy's inner circle, there's a disturbing pattern emerging, one that mirrors the allegations made by Cassie Ventura. Cassie described being manipulated, exploited, and forced into situations she never agreed to. Now, some insiders believe Usher may have endured similar treatment, though he's never publicly confirmed it. The most troubling of these rumors suggest that Usher, as a teenager, may have been passed around to powerful men within the industry. It's alleged that Diddy, under the guise of mentorship, used Usher's access and talent as leverage, exposing him to environments where SA was normalized and expected. People close to the situation have claimed that the same tactics Diddy used to control Cassie, coercion, isolation, and a false promise of success, were also used on Usher during those early years. Unlike Cassie, however, Usher has never come forward to share his side, and many believe it's because of deep shame and trauma. He's hinted at uncomfortable memories from his time at Diddy's home, often stopping short of giving details. In interviews, Usher has admitted he saw things no child should have seen, but beyond that, there's silence. Those who believe the rumors point to that silence as proof of pain. They argue that Usher, like many young artists, may have been conditioned to stay quiet, to protect his image, to protect his career, and perhaps to protect the people who hurt him. The fear of being judged, questioned, or not believed can be powerful, especially in an industry where speaking out often means losing everything. What makes this even more difficult is that Usher became wildly successful. From the outside, it looked like Diddy's guidance worked, but behind the scenes, some believe that success came at a heavy emotional cost, one that Usher has carried with him for decades. The pressure to stay silent, to smile for the cameras, and to thank the very people who may have caused harm is a heavy burden for anyone, especially someone who was just a kid when it all started. Now, as Diddy faces legal battles and public backlash, the truth about what happened during those early days may finally begin to surface. Whether Usher ever decides to speak out is his decision, but for many watching this unfold, the silence speaks volumes. Another reason some believe Usher has never spoken publicly about his time with Diddy is simple. simple: fear. While shame and embarrassment might be part of it, many now believe that Usher's silence may have been forced, not chosen. Over the years, multiple people close to the industry have come forward with chilling claims about how Diddy operated behind the scenes. And one recurring allegation keeps coming up: he recorded everything. According to former insiders, Diddy was known for having cameras around during his private parties and behind closed doors. Several lawsuits and witness statements allege that he secretly recorded encounters, some consensual, others not, with the intent of using the footage as leverage. This wasn't just about collecting memories, it was about control. And if those rumors are true, people close to the situation believe Usher may have been one of the many individuals who ended up on those tapes. Insiders have hinted that Diddy's mentorship came with strings attached, and one of those strings may have been keeping damaging footage to ensure loyalty and silence. In other words, blackmail. If Usher ever considered coming forward to speak about what happened to him as a teen, he may have had to weigh that decision against the risk of private footage being leaked, or worse, his entire career being destroyed. Because let's be clear, in the entertainment world, being blackballed doesn't just mean losing work, it means being cut off from the very machine that made you. No music deals, no endorsements, no protection. And when you're going up against someone as powerful and connected as Diddy once was, the risk isn't just professional, it could also be personal. Some believe Diddy used that fear to keep people quiet, not just through industry pressure, but through threats, either directly or by implication. People like Gene Deal, Jaguar Wright, and others have said for years that Diddy had a reputation for intimidation. And in Usher's case, many fans and insiders wonder if that fear still lingers today. After all, Usher has had every opportunity over the years to speak on what happened. He's talked about Diddy in interviews, been asked about Diddy Camp, and even admitted he wouldn't send his own son into the same environment. But he never fully opened up. And some say that's because he knows exactly what could happen if he does. If Diddy did record him, or even threatened to, Usher may have been left with no good options: speak up and risk public humiliation, career suicide, or worse, or stay silent, carry the trauma, and try to move forward. Now, while he tried his best to keep things hidden, it didn't last long because these things always come out. Usher's name has now surfaced in court testimony, tied to one of the most disturbing allegations yet against Sean Diddy Combs. And this time, it's not just about what happened behind closed doors, but what happened in plain sight. According to a report by People magazine, former Danity Kane singer Dawn Richard took the stand and delivered powerful testimony, alleging that she witnessed Diddy physically assault Cassie Ventura in public during a high-profile dinner in 2010. What makes this even more shocking is that, according to Richard, several celebrities were present during the assault, including Usher. The incident reportedly happened at a restaurant. Richard testified that Diddy and Cassie had been quietly arguing when, without warning, Diddy punched Cassie in the stomach. She said Cassie immediately bent over in pain. He told her to leave, Richard recalled. And perhaps the most chilling part? No one intervened. Usher, Nayo, Jimmy Iovine, and other unnamed celebrities were allegedly present during the incident. And according to Richard, not a single person stepped in to stop it. But it didn't end there. Richard described a second violent outburst that occurred shortly afterward, this time inside a car. She claimed Diddy grabbed Cassie by the neck, slapped her in the face, and told her to shut up. She said she witnessed Diddy tell Cassie, "I own you." Richard said she tried to convince Cassie to leave him, but noted that Cassie looked emotionally torn and visibly scared. "I could see the fear," Richard testified. These revelations paint an even darker picture of the environment surrounding Diddy at the height of his influence, and raise serious questions about the people around him, including Usher. If Richard's account is accurate, it means Usher witnessed an act of violence, and, like others at the table, didn't intervene. Of course, it's unclear whether Usher processed what was happening in that moment, or whether he realized how serious the situation truly was. But in light of everything coming to light, from civil lawsuits to criminal charges, his presence during that dinner is now under scrutiny. As more witnesses come forward, Usher's connection to Diddy continues to resurface, not just through speculation, but through sworn statements in court. Whether Usher will ever speak out about what he saw or experienced remains unknown. But for now, his name is firmly tied to a story that continues to grow darker with every passing week. So, what do you think? Comment down below and let us know. If you liked this video, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be the first to see my next video. I post updates like this every week where I uncover the secrets of your favorite celebrities.